Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of Haven Prime, staring at the massive view screen that showed empty space. The orbital station hummed quietly around him as his crew worked at their stations. Everything seemed normal until the alarm started blaring. "Sir, we have multiple contacts on long-range sensors," called out Lieutenant Danny Walsh from his position. "They're big, and there are a lot of them." Jake walked over to the sensor station and looked at the readings. His face went pale. Hundreds of ships were coming toward Earth and the human colonies. These weren't human ships. They were too big and too advanced for anything humans had built. "Get me Earth Command right now," Jake ordered. His hands shook slightly as he watched the alien fleet grow larger on the screen. On the farming world of New Boston, Governor Lisa Campbell was having breakfast with her family when her emergency communicator started beeping. She looked at the message and dropped her coffee cup. The ceramic shattered on the kitchen floor, but she didn't notice. "Honey, what's wrong?" asked her husband Tom, seeing her shocked expression. "I have to go to the government center right now," Lisa said, already moving toward the door. "Something big is happening." The government center was chaos when Lisa arrived. People were running around, shouting orders and trying to coordinate with other colonies. The main screen showed the same thing Jake was seeing from Haven Prime, an enormous alien fleet approaching human space. Admiral Marcus Stone appeared on the communication screen from Earth. His usually calm face looked worried. "All colony governors need to listen carefully," he said. "We are about to receive a message from an alien empire. This is not a drill." Back on Haven Prime, Jake watched as one of the alien ships moved forward from the fleet. It was huge, easily 10 times the size of the largest human warship. Strange symbols glowed along its dark hull. "Incoming transmission," reported Communications Officer Betty Morgan. "They're using our language, sir." "Put it on the main screen," Jake said. The screen flickered and showed a tall reptilian creature wearing elaborate armor. Its yellow eyes stared coldly at the camera. When it spoke, its voice was deep and threatening. "I am Admiral Zekthara of the Galactic Dominion," the alien said. "Your species will listen to these words carefully. We have conquered 1,000 worlds and ruled this galaxy for centuries. Now we have come to your small corner of space." Jake felt his heart racing as he listened. Around him, his crew had stopped working and were staring at the screen. "You humans have 2 choices," Admiral Zekthara continued. "You can surrender your governments, your military, and your independence. You will serve the Dominion as a tributary species. Your people will work for the Empire and fight in our armies when we command it." Lisa Campbell watched the same message in the New Boston Government Center. The room had gone completely silent. Everyone knew what the alien was about to say next. Or, the Admiral's voice grew even colder, "You can resist us and be destroyed. We have done this many times before. Species that fight us are eliminated completely. Their worlds are left empty and lifeless." The alien paused, letting the threat sink in. "You have 72 hours to decide. Send a representative to negotiate your surrender, or we will begin the destruction of your worlds. There is no third option." The transmission ended, leaving the humans staring at blank screens. On Earth, in a secret military facility buried deep underground, Dr. Alex Turner was working late in his laboratory when the emergency alert reached him. He read the message twice, not believing what he was seeing. Dr. Turner had been working on classified weapons projects for years. Most of them were theoretical, designed to fight other humans in case of war. But one project was different. Operation Pyrrhus was something he hoped would never be used. He picked up his secure phone and called General Patricia Hayes at Earth Command. "General, this is Dr. Turner. I assume you've seen the alien message?" "Yes, Doctor. We need to discuss all our options. How quickly can you get to Earth Command?" "I'm already packing," Dr. Turner replied. "General, I think it's time to brief the leadership about Pyrrhus." Across human space, the reaction was the same everywhere: fear, shock, and desperate planning. On the mining colony of Titan's Rest, Colonel Kate Rodriguez was training her Marines when the message arrived. She watched it with her soldiers, seeing the fear in their young faces. "Colonel, what do we do?" asked Sergeant Mike Davis, one of her best troops. Kate thought for a moment before answering. We prepare for the worst and hope for the best. But I'll tell you one thing. I've never kneeled to anyone and I'm not starting now. On the trade, Station Harmony Point, Commander Ryan Clark received encrypted orders from Earth Command. The message was short but clear. Prepare all available ships for possible military action. Evacuation protocols were to be ready within 12 hours. Ryan looked out at the small fleet of human warships docked at the station. They were good ships with brave crews, but they would be like insects fighting giants against the alien fleet. As the news spread throughout human colonies, different reactions emerged. Some leaders, like Mayor Ron Phillips of Terra Verde, began discussing surrender. We have to think about our families, he argued in emergency sessions. Maybe serving them is better than dying. Others refused to even consider it. Captain Sam Wright, commanding the patrol ship Independence, sent a message to his crew. Whatever Earth decides, we fight. That's what we signed up for. President Amy Foster sat in her office on Earth, reading reports from across human space. The weight of the decision fell on her shoulders. In 72 hours, she would have to choose between slavery and extinction for the entire human race. She picked up her phone and called Admiral Stone. Marcus, I need you to gather everyone. The cabinet, the military leaders, the scientists. We need to discuss something called Operation Pyrrhus. Outside her window, Earth looked peaceful in the afternoon sun. But in space, sensors were tracking the approaching alien fleet. The countdown to humanity's greatest test had begun. The next 72 hours would determine if humans would kneel before the Empire or choose a path that no other species had ever taken. The galaxy waited to see what these strange creatures would decide when faced with impossible odds. 36 hours had passed since the alien ultimatum. The emergency meeting on Earth was in its second day, and tensions were running high. President Amy Foster looked around the room at the faces of humanity's leaders. Some looked determined, others looked defeated. We need to face reality, said Senator Bill Crawford, banging his fist on the table. Their fleet is massive, we can't fight them. If we surrender, at least our children will live. General Patricia Hayes shook her head. Live as slaves, you mean? Did you hear what that alien said? They want us to fight in their armies. How many humans will die conquering other worlds for them? Dr. Alex Turner sat quietly in the corner, a thick folder marked Top Secret in front of him. President Foster noticed his silence and called on him. Doctor, you said you had something to show us. I think now is the time. Dr. Turner stood, up slowly. His hands trembled as he opened the folder. What I'm about to tell you never leaves this room. 3 years ago, we started a project called Operation Pyrrhus. It was designed as a last resort weapon, something so terrible we hoped we'd never use it. He activated a holographic display showing technical diagrams. We can turn our own worlds into poisoned wastelands. Every fusion reactor, every industrial facility, every piece of infrastructure can be weaponized. If we can't have our worlds, no one can. The room went silent. Admiral Marcus Stone was the first to speak. You're talking about destroying everything we've built. Yes, Dr. Turner replied. But it would deny the aliens what they came for. They expect to conquer valuable worlds full of resources and people. Instead, they'd get nothing but radioactive ruins. On the farming world of Terra Verde, Mayor Ron Phillips was having his own meeting with the Colony Council. The large conference room was packed with worried farmers and their families. I say we surrender, Phillips announced. These aliens have been conquering worlds for centuries. They must know how to rule fairly, or their empire would have collapsed by now. Farmer Joe Martinez stood up angrily. Fairly? They want to use our sons as soldiers in their wars. How is that fair? It's better than everyone dying, Phillips shot back. At least our families would survive. The argument continued for hours. Some colonists agreed with Phillips, believing that survival was more important than freedom. Others wanted to fight, even if it meant certain death. Meanwhile, on the mining colony of Titan's Rest, Colonel Kate Rodriguez was preparing her Marines for the worst. She had moved all civilian families to underground shelters and was setting up defensive positions around the colony's main facilities. Colonel, what are our orders if the aliens land? Asked Sergeant Mike Davis. Kate checked her secure communicator. New messages from Earth Command were coming in every few hours, but none gave clear orders yet. "We hold our ground and protect the civilians," she said. "Whatever happens, we don't abandon our people." Private Lisa Johnson, barely 18 years old, looked scared. "Colonel, do you think we can win?" Kate put her hand on the young Marine's shoulder. "Sometimes winning isn't about surviving, Johnson. Sometimes it's about standing up for what's right, no matter the cost." In space, Commander Ryan Clark was leading a small patrol fleet near the edge of human territory. His ships were watching the alien fleet from a safe distance, trying to gather intelligence about their capabilities. "Sir, we're getting new orders from Earth Command," reported his communications officer, Lieutenant Nancy White. Ryan read the encrypted message on his private screen. His face grew grim. The orders were to prepare for something called the Scorched Earth Protocol. If negotiations failed, his ships were to begin destroying human infrastructure to deny it to the enemy. "Lieutenant White, send a message to all ship commanders. Tell them to report to my ship immediately for a classified briefing." An hour later, Ryan stood before the captains of 12 human warships. These were some of the best officers in the human fleet, but they looked confused and worried. "What I'm about to tell you is classified at the highest level," Ryan began. "If Earth decides to resist, we won't be fighting to win. We'll be fighting to make sure the aliens get nothing from their victory," Captain Susan Miller of the destroyer. Vigilance raised her hand. "Sir, are you saying we're going to destroy our own colonies?" "If necessary, yes. The idea is to make conquest so costly that other species will think twice before surrendering to the aliens." The room erupted with questions and arguments. Some officers supported the plan, understanding that it might inspire other worlds to resist the alien empire. Others were horrified at the thought of destroying everything humans had built. Back on Earth, Intelligence Officer Ben Hayes was working around the clock to decode alien communications. His team had managed to break some of their simpler transmissions, and what they found was disturbing. Ben rushed to President Foster's office with his findings. "Madam President, you need to see this immediately." He showed her the translated messages on his tablet. The aliens weren't just planning to rule humanity. They were discussing how to use humans as expendable troops in their next conquest. Worse, they planned to take human children and raise them as loyal soldiers from birth. "They never intended to honor any surrender agreement," Ben explained. "To them, we're just tools to be used up and thrown away." President Foster felt sick reading the intelligence reports. Any hope of negotiating a fair surrender was gone. The aliens saw humans as nothing more than useful animals. She called Admiral Stone immediately. "Marcus, gather the cabinet. We need to make our final decision." On New Boston, Governor Lisa Campbell received a call from her daughter, who was studying on Earth. "Mom, are we really going to fight them?" the young woman asked, her voice shaking. "I don't know yet, sweetheart," Lisa replied, trying to sound calm. "But whatever happens, I want you to know that some things are worth more than life itself. Freedom is one of them." As the 72-hour deadline approached, humanity remained divided. Some colonies voted to surrender, hoping to save their people. Others prepared for a final battle they knew they couldn't win. But in secret military facilities across human space, Dr. Turner's team was making final preparations for Operation Pyrrhus. Automated systems were being installed that could turn entire worlds into uninhabitable wastelands at the push of a button. President Foster stood at her office window, looking up at the stars. Somewhere out there, an alien fleet was waiting for humanity's answer. In 12 hours, she would have to choose between slavery and extinction. She picked up her phone and made the call that would change everything. "Dr. Turner, this is the President. I need you to brief me on exactly how Pyrrhus works. I think it's time the galaxy learned what happens when you threaten human freedom." The countdown continued, and with each passing hour, more leaders made their choice. Some chose survival at any cost. Others chose to burn rather than kneel. The aliens waited, confident that these primitive humans would surrender like all the others. They had no idea they were about to face something completely new in their 1,000 years of conquest. The 72 hours were up. Admiral Zekthara stood on the bridge of his flagship, waiting for the human response. His yellow eyes stared at the communication screen, expecting to see a defeated human leader ready to surrender. Instead, President Amy Foster appeared on the screen. Her face was calm, but her eyes burned with determination. "Admiral Zekthara," she said clearly, "I speak for all of humanity. We have heard your demands, and we have made our choice." The alien admiral leaned forward, confident in what he was about to hear. "We will not kneel," President Foster continued. "We will not serve your empire. We will not let our children become your soldiers. If you want our worlds, you can have them. But you'll get nothing but ash and ruin." Admiral Zekthara's eyes widened in surprise. In 1,000 years of conquest, no species had ever chosen destruction over surrender. "You are making a mistake," he hissed. "We will take your worlds. Anyway, your deaths will be meaningless. We'll see about that," President Foster replied, then cut the transmission. On Haven Prime, Captain Jake Morrison watched the alien fleet begin its advance. His hands were steady now as he activated the station's defense systems. He knew they couldn't win, but they would make the aliens pay for every inch. "All stations prepare for battle," Jake ordered. Around him, his crew worked with grim determination. They had all volunteered to stay behind while the civilian population evacuated. Lieutenant Danny Walsh looked up from his console. "Sir, receiving activation codes for Purist Protocol." Jake nodded and entered his command codes. Across human space, similar scenes were playing out. Military commanders were activating systems that would destroy everything they had sworn to protect. On the agricultural world of New Austin, the evacuation was in full swing. Governor Lisa Campbell stood in the control center, watching the last transport ships lift off. Below them, the fertile farming domes that had fed millions were about to become poisoned wastelands. "Automated systems are ready, Governor," reported Chief Engineer Mark Taylor. "Once activated, the industrial chemicals will be released into the atmosphere. The planet will be uninhabitable for centuries." Lisa's finger hovered over the activation button. She thought about all the families who had built their lives here, all the crops that would never grow again. Then she thought about her daughter and pressed the button. Warning sirens began blaring across New Austin as toxic gases started pouring from hidden vents. The beautiful green fields began to wither and die within minutes. In space, Commander Ryan Clark led his small fleet in a desperate attack against the alien advance ships. His orders were simple: buy time for the evacuation and make sure no human technology fell into alien hands intact. "All ships commence attack run," Ryan commanded. The 12 human warships charged at the massive alien fleet like insects attacking giants. The alien ships barely slowed down as they destroyed the human vessels one by one, but Ryan's sacrifice bought precious time for the evacuation ships to escape. On Titan's Rest, Colonel Kate Rodriguez watched the alien dropships descend through the planet's thin atmosphere. Her Marines were positioned in the underground mining tunnels, ready for their final battle. "Remember, we're not trying to win," Kate told her troops. "We're trying to make sure they get nothing from this place." The alien soldiers began landing near the main mining complex. They were tall, armored creatures that moved with military precision, but they had no idea what waited for them underground. As the aliens entered the mining tunnels, Kate's Marines fought a running battle through the narrow passages. Every few hundred meters, they would detonate charges that collapsed sections of the tunnel behind them. Sergeant Mike Davis led a group of Marines in a desperate last stand at the main control center. "Colonel, we can't hold them much longer." "You don't have to," Kate replied, her finger on the master detonation switch. "All Marines fall back to evacuation points. We're bringing the whole mountain down." The explosion was visible from orbit. The entire underground complex collapsed, bearing billions of tons of rare minerals under radioactive rubble. The aliens had won the battle, but they had gained nothing. Dr. Alex Turner worked frantically in his mobile laboratory, a converted cargo ship hiding in an asteroid field. His team was putting finishing touches on their final weapon, a biological agent designed specifically for the alien species. "Doctor, we're getting reports from all colonies," said his assistant, Dr. Karen Bell. "The Purist Protocol is working. Every world they take is being turned into a wasteland." Alex nodded grimly. "Good. but we need to make sure they understand the full cost of their victory. Back on Haven Prime, Captain Jake Morrison fought his station's last battle. The alien ships had broken through their defenses, and boarding parties were cutting through the hull. "Sir, they're almost through," reported Lieutenant Danny Walsh, his weapon ready. Jake looked around the bridge one last time. "All hands, this is the captain. It's been an honor serving with you. Activate final protocol." Haven Prime's fusion reactors began overloading in a carefully controlled sequence. The explosion would destroy the station and several alien ships, ensuring that no human technology survived intact. Admiral Zekathara watched from his flagship as world after world fell to his forces. But instead of the easy conquest he expected, he was seeing something unprecedented. The humans were destroying everything rather than let it fall into alien hands. "Admiral, we have taken New Austin," reported one of his commanders. "But the entire planet is poisoned. We cannot use it." "What about the mining worlds?" Zekathara demanded. "Same result, sir. The humans collapsed the mines and contaminated the minerals. Titan's Rest will be useless for centuries." More reports came in from across human space. Every factory was destroyed, every spaceport was sabotaged, every piece of useful infrastructure was turned into radioactive rubble. On Earth, the final preparations were underway. President Foster had moved to a secure bunker deep underground. The planet's major cities were being evacuated as automated systems prepared for the final act of defiance. "Madam President, the alien fleet has reached Earth orbit," reported Admiral Stone. "Then it's time," Foster replied. She looked at the activation key in her hands. With this, Earth itself would become uninhabitable rather than serve the alien empire. Dr. Turner's voice came over the communication system from his hidden ship. "Madam President, we're ready to deploy the biological weapon. Once released, it will spread through their fleet within days." "Do it," Foster ordered. "If we're going to burn, we're taking them with us." The biological weapon was released from hidden satellites around Earth. It was invisible and odorless, designed to be harmless to humans but deadly to the alien species. Within hours, it would be spreading through their ships. Admiral Zekathara began to realize the true cost of his victory. His forces had conquered dozens of human worlds, but every single one was now worthless. Worse, his own soldiers were beginning to report strange illnesses. On the last free human colony of Haven's Edge, Captain Sam Wright broadcast a final message to the galaxy. "This is Captain Wright of the Human Resistance. We want every species in the galaxy to hear this. We chose to burn our worlds rather than serve as slaves. We chose death over dishonor. Remember us when the Empire comes for you." The message was transmitted on every frequency, reaching civilizations across the galaxy. For the first time in centuries, other species heard about a people who had chosen extinction over submission. As Earth's cities burned and the last human ships fought their final battles, something unexpected began happening throughout the Dominion Empire. Other subject species started whispering about the humans who had refused to kneel. The conquest was complete, but Admiral Zekathara's victory tasted like ash. He had gained nothing but poisoned worlds and a growing plague that was killing his soldiers. Worse, the human example was spreading like a virus through his empire. The galaxy had seen something new, a species that would rather die free than live as slaves. And that example would haunt the Dominion for years to come. 3 weeks had passed since the conquest ended. Admiral Zekathara stood in the ruins of what used to be New York City, watching his soldiers patrol empty streets. The great human city was a ghost town now, its buildings still standing, but its people gone. His environmental suit beeped a warning. The air was still poisoned from the industrial chemicals the humans had released. Even with protection, his troops could only patrol for a few hours at a time. "Admiral, we have another report from the medical division," said Commander Veltar, approaching with obvious concern. Zekathara read the datapad and felt his blood run cold. More soldiers were getting sick from the mysterious illness. The doctors couldn't figure out what was causing it, but they were dying faster now. "How many?" he asked. 57 more cases today, sir. That makes 300 total across the fleet." The Admiral looked around at the empty city. They had won, but what kind of victory was this? The humans had left them nothing but poisoned worlds and a plague that was killing his forces. On the occupied world of Terra Verde, Mayor Ron Phillips sat in his office, staring out at the alien garrison that now controlled his colony. He had been one of the few leaders who supported surrender, believing it would save lives. Now he watched alien soldiers in environmental suits patrolling his streets. The few colonists who had stayed were prisoners in their own homes. The aliens didn't trust them, and Phillips couldn't blame them after what the other human worlds had done. His assistant Jenny Parker knocked on his door. "Sir, the alien commander wants to see you." Phillips walked to the government center where Commander Klixvan, a tall reptilian officer, was waiting. The alien looked tired and worried. "Human Phillips," the commander said through his translator. "Device. Your people on other worlds, they continue to fight us even after defeat. Why?" Phillips thought carefully before answering. "Because they believe freedom is more important than life." The alien commander stared at him with confusion. "This makes no sense. Dead beings have no freedom. Dead beings have nothing." "Maybe," Phillips replied, "but they chose to die as free humans rather than live as your slaves." Commander Klixvan left the meeting more puzzled than before. In his species' culture, survival was the highest value. The human behavior made no sense to him. Hidden in the asteroid belt between Jupiter and Mars, Commander Ryan Clark commanded the last free human ships. His small fleet had survived by staying mobile and striking at alien supply convoys. "Sir, we intercepted another alien communication," reported Lieutenant Nancy White. "They're having supply problems. Many of their soldiers are getting sick." Ryan smiled grimly. Dr. Turner's biological weapon was working better than they had hoped. "Good. Send the information to Haven's Edge. Captain Wright needs to know our gift is working." The surviving human ships continued their guerrilla war, never staying in one place long enough to be caught. They couldn't win, but they could make the occupation expensive. On the last free human colony of Haven's Edge, Captain Sam Wright read, "The intelligence reports with satisfaction. The alien empire was struggling to maintain control over the conquered worlds." "Captain, we're ready to broadcast the next message," said Communications Officer Linda Davis. Wright nodded and activated the transmitter. His words would reach dozens of species across the galaxy. "This is the free human government speaking to all species under Dominion rule," Wright began. "3 weeks ago, our people chose to destroy their own worlds rather than serve as slaves. Today, the aliens rule over nothing but poisoned ruins. Their soldiers are dying from diseases we left behind. This is what resistance looks like." The message spread through the Dominion Empire like wildfire. On dozens of worlds, subject species whispered about the humans who had chosen death over slavery. In the underground tunnels of the mining world Keftar, a group of rabbit-like aliens called the Villani gathered in secret to discuss the human broadcast. "They destroyed their own worlds?" asked Elder Thippa, barely believing what she had heard. "Yes, Elder," replied young Kivan. "Rather than let the Dominion use their resources, they turned everything to poison. The Villani had been slaves for 200 years. They had always believed resistance was impossible. But now they were hearing about a species that had found a way to deny the Empire victory. Similar conversations were happening throughout the Dominion. Species that had accepted slavery for centuries were beginning to think dangerous thoughts about freedom. Back on Earth, in a secret underground laboratory, Dr. Alex Turner was dying. The biological weapon he had created was designed to be harmless to humans. But the stress of the past months had broken his health. His assistant, Dr. Karen Bell, sat by his bedside. "Doctor, the latest reports show the weapon is spreading faster than we predicted. It's reaching the aliens' homeworlds now." Turner smiled weakly. "Good. Let them feel what it's like to watch their people die for someone else's ambition." He had spent his last weeks perfecting the biological agent. It was his final gift to the galaxy, a weapon that would make the Dominion pay dearly for their conquest of humanity. On the Dominion capital world of Velnox, High Command was in crisis. The mysterious plague was spreading through their military and they couldn't stop it. Worse, reports were coming in of unrest on dozens of subject worlds. Supreme Admiral Korthak slammed his fist on the conference table. How did a primitive species cause this much damage? The humans were more clever than we thought, replied Intelligence Chief Mordak. They turned their defeat into a weapon against us. What about the other species? Are they really considering rebellion? Mordak nodded grimly. The human example is spreading. 17 worlds have reported acts of sabotage in the past week. The subject species are beginning to believe resistance is possible. Meanwhile, on Terra Verde, something unexpected was happening. The human colonists who had stayed behind were beginning to show signs of the same mysterious illness that was killing the alien soldiers. Mayor Phillips felt the first symptoms: fever, weakness, difficulty breathing. He realized with horror that Dr. Turner's biological weapon wasn't as selective as they had thought. But instead of despair, Phillips felt something else: pride. Even in death, the humans had found a way to strike back at their oppressors. If he was going to die, at least he would die as a free man. The alien commander Klixvan also felt the illness taking hold. As he lay in the medical bay, he thought about his conversation with Phillips. The human had chosen to die rather than live, as a slave. Now the alien commander was beginning to understand why. Governor Lisa Campbell, now a refugee leader hiding on a transport ship, received reports from across human space. The aliens were dying, but so were the remaining humans. The biological weapon was consuming both species. She thought about her daughter, safely evacuated to Haven's Edge. At least some humans would survive to carry on their legacy of resistance. "Ma'am, we're receiving a transmission from Captain Wright," reported her communications officer. Wright's face appeared on the screen, looking tired but determined. "Governor, we need to prepare for the final phase. The aliens are weakening, but so are we. We need to make sure the galaxy remembers what we did here." Lisa nodded. "What do you need from us?" "Help me record everything. Every battle, every sacrifice, every choice we made. Future generations need to know that humans chose to burn rather than kneel." As the biological weapon continued its deadly work, both human and alien populations were declining rapidly. But the idea the humans had planted was growing stronger. Across the galaxy, subject species were beginning to organize. They had seen what determination could accomplish. They had learned that sometimes losing could be more powerful than winning. The Dominion Empire was discovering that conquering humans had been the worst mistake in their 1,000-year history. They had gained nothing and lost everything, including their reputation for invincibility. The galaxy would never be the same. 5 years had passed since the conquest of humanity. The Galactic Dominion was crumbling from within, and Admiral Zekathara knew it was all because of one species that had refused to kneel. He stood in the medical bay of his flagship, watching. His doctors worked desperately to find a cure for the human plague. Half his fleet was dead and the other half was dying slowly. The biological weapon the humans had created was like nothing they had ever seen. "Any progress?" he asked Dr. Yithkar, his chief medical officer. The doctor shook his head sadly. "The human disease adapts faster than we can counter it. It's almost like it was designed to learn from our treatments." Zekathara felt anger and something else: respect. The humans had been brilliant in their final revenge. Even in death, they were still fighting. On the other side of the galaxy, the Villani rebellion was in full swing. Elder Thippa led her people in coordinated strikes against Dominion facilities. They had learned from the human example. If you can't win by fighting, you win by making victory worthless. Remember what the humans taught us, she told her followers. Destroy everything useful. Leave them nothing but empty buildings. Young Kivan, now a seasoned rebel fighter, planted charges in a weapons factory. The humans showed us that freedom is worth any price, he said to his team. Today we make the Dominion pay that price. The explosion could be seen from orbit. Another valuable facility was gone, turned to rubble rather than serve the Empire. Across the galaxy, 17 different species had begun similar rebellions. The Zefki bird people destroyed their own communication networks, rather than let the Dominion use them. The rock-skinned Morgan collapsed their mining tunnels just like the humans had done on Titan's Rest. On Haven's Edge, Captain Sam Wright was dying. The human plague had finally reached the last free colony, but he didn't care. His work was almost finished. "Captain, the memorial archive is complete," reported Communications Officer Linda Davis, her voice weak from the same disease. "We've recorded everything, every battle, every sacrifice, every choice our people made." Wright smiled despite his pain. "Good. Make sure it gets transmitted to every species in the galaxy. They need to know what we did and why we did it." The final human transmission went out on all frequencies, carrying the complete story of humanity's last stand. It included President Foster's final speech, Colonel Rodriguez's last battle, and Dr. Turner's confession about the biological weapon. But most importantly, it carried a simple message. We chose to burn rather than kneel. What will you choose? On the Dominion capital world of Velnox, Supreme Admiral Korthax was facing a tribunal. The Empire's leadership wanted someone to blame for the disaster that conquering humanity had become. "You assured us this would be a simple conquest," accused High Chancellor Morvex. "Instead, you brought death to our empire." Korthax stood proudly despite his failing health. "The humans were unlike any species we had ever encountered. They valued freedom more than life itself. And now our empire is dying because of your failure," the Chancellor continued. "No," Korthax replied. "Our empire is dying because we tried to enslave a species that would rather die than serve. We learned too late that some things cannot be conquered." Reports continued to pour in from across the Dominion. The Keftar mining worlds were in open revolt. The Yilthara agricultural planets had poisoned their crops rather than feed the Empire. The proud Zarquan warrior species had turned their weapons against their Dominion overseers. Each rebellion followed the human model. Deny the enemy everything, even if it meant destroying your own world. On Terra Verde, Mayor Ron Phillips died, peacefully in his bed, one of the last humans on the occupied world. Before he passed, he left a final message for whoever might find it. "I was wrong to support surrender," he wrote. "I thought living as slaves was better than dying free. But I understand now. The humans who chose to burn their worlds were right. Some things are worth more than survival. Freedom is one of them." Commander Klixvan, the alien officer who had questioned Phillips about human behavior, found the message. He was dying too, victim of the same plague that had killed his prisoner. As he read Phillips's words, the alien commander finally understood. The humans hadn't been crazy or self-destructive. They had been making a choice that his species could never comprehend, choosing honor over survival. In the ruins of Chicago, a group of alien archaeologists made an incredible discovery. Before the city was abandoned, the humans had built a massive monument in the center of town. Carved into black stone were the names of every colony that had chosen destruction over slavery. At the base of the monument was a simple inscription. They chose to burn rather than kneel. Let the galaxy remember. The archaeologists were members of the Talvarine species, longtime subjects of the Dominion. As they read the human monument, they felt something they had never experienced before, the desire for freedom. Dr. Yithkar, the Dominion's chief medical officer, made a breakthrough in his research. He finally understood how the human biological weapon worked, but instead of developing a cure, he made a different choice. He destroyed all his research and released the weapon specifications to every rebel group in the galaxy. If the humans could choose death over slavery, so could he. The Dominion's final collapse came suddenly. On hundreds of worlds, subject species rose up simultaneously. They had learned the human lesson well: make conquest so costly that the Empire would rather give up than continue fighting. On the former human world of New Austin, now a poisoned wasteland, a small group of Villani rebels placed a memorial stone. It bore a simple message in their own language. Here died the humans who taught us that freedom is worth any price. Similar monuments appeared on dozens of worlds across the galaxy. The humans had become legends, remembered not for their technology or their military might, but for their refusal to accept slavery. 10 years after the last human died, a new galactic alliance was formed. It was made up of the species that had learned from humanity's example. They called themselves the Free Worlds Coalition, and their charter began with words borrowed from human history. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all beings are created equal. The galactic dominion was gone, destroyed by the rebellion it had tried to prevent. The humans had lost their war, but their defeat had inspired something greater, the liberation of an entire galaxy. In the archives of the Coalition, human history was carefully preserved. Children of a dozen species learned about the people who chose to burn their worlds rather than see them enslaved. The galaxy remembered the humans. They remembered the species that proved some things are worth more than survival. They remembered the people who chose to burn rather than kneel, and in that memory, humanity achieved a victory greater than any conquest. They had freed the galaxy by showing it what true courage looked like. The stars themselves seemed to shine brighter, illuminated by the fire of human determination that continued to burn long after the last human had died.